Right now, you're hearing music made with my new Ableton Live pack called VCR Wave. I took Teenage Engineering's OP1, I used the Dr. Wave synth, and I recorded samples of it to VCR tape. And I've recorded those samples back into Ableton Live to make 40 instrument racks. And they all have this really great, lush, glorious sound of VCR. You can hear the hiss and the buzz. And they have some character that you can really only get by recording straight to a VCR tape and then taking that back into live. It's a really cool pack. Check it out. It's currently the May 2020 download for the Music Production Club, which is the best way to get it, the cheapest way. And there's also a free pack that contains 3 new instruments that I did using the exact same process. So check it out. It's all available at brianfunk.com. How's it going, everybody, and welcome to the Music Production Podcast. I'm your host, Brian Funk. On today's show, I have Maddy Kong, who makes music as Sesamii, and that's Sesamii spelt with 2 I's at the end, in case you're looking it up to make it a little bit easier to Google. Maddy comes from the world of Berklee's educational system, where she got into electronic music, but she's also got a very deep and rich classical training, which I always think is interesting to hear the story of how people come from that world. And then it's almost like this I activated Siri somehow. I'll clean that up. But how that's never happened before. But how like you come from like that very like traditional world, and now this electronic music world is so open, and the paths are not anywhere near as well trotted as they were in the other genres. Maddy was also along with myself, we did the New York City Ableton Live user group where we did a presentation online for Zoom, which was kind of like a new experience we're all getting involved in. So I thought it'd be great to have you on the show, and I'm really glad you took the time and said yes. So welcome aboard, Maddy.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you so much. Hi, everyone. I'm Maddy, and I'm originally from Perth, Western Australia, but I've been in the United States since the start of 2017, where I began my Berklee College of Music education. So that's where it all started, and I am currently based in Brooklyn, New York. So, yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah, so you have a pretty deep background. Do you mind telling us how you got started with your music, and then how do you decide to switch over and enter this world of the electronic age?
Sure, yeah. So growing up, I was a classically trained pianist, violinist, and violist. So first of all, the piano I played since I was like 6 years old, and the string instruments played when I was like 10. So a good number of years behind that. And in high school, I remember doing a lot of arrangements of nice new like movie soundtracks, and I would do them on Sibelius. And I was using Sibelius 7 at that time, and it wasn't like the full installed version. So it was like the really stock standard MIDI sounding version, but I thought they sounded so good at the beginning. So that's all I knew about music production, was writing manuscripts and putting them in, and somehow the notes spitting back out at me sounding like a violin, a E violin. And I enjoyed doing that. And I auditioned to Berklee just thinking, hey, maybe why not? Like, it's a music school. If I get rejected, so whatever. And then I got in, and I was like, okay, maybe I can try film scoring to be my thing. So the only film scoring thing I knew was how to write manuscripts. And yeah, it was just like such a big step from hearing other people's demos versus my Sibelius 7 manuscripted demos. I was like, how do you get that? And I discovered like in the first week of Berklee, I went to the library for orientation, and they were giving a Pro Tools masterclass, and it was like a beginner's masterclass kind of thing. And that was the first DAW I opened, was Pro Tools, and I did MIDI programming in Pro Tools. And I guess that was the day I really found out about, you can quantize MIDI, you can quantize whatever you play in. And at that moment on, I knew that I had to really invest my time and just all my knowledge in this electronic production kind of world, just making it sound real and good all from a computer. And I think that's
Mm.
what really catalyzed my, enthusiasm. Yeah.
Right. You came across something brand new. You're in the new place and
Yeah.
got you excited. Now, were
Yeah.
you in Australia when you got accepted into Berkeley?
I was actually in my final year of high school when I got accepted. So, yeah.
Okay, so you kind of had this like big decision to make. Am I going to go on the other side of the planet? To,
Yeah, it was actually very close to my finals, like I guess it's like SATs, like the equivalent.
okay.
So, yeah, it was like that, but in Australia. And so I was like studying like 6 subjects and, you know, all out. And then I received this and I'm like, what do I do? Like, does my exam even count?
Mm,
But, I actually deferred my entrance to Berkeley for a year and just really had time to really think about, like, is this what I want to do? Is this what I want to pursue? And then, yeah, I was fortunate enough to just make the decision and go. And just, I didn't know anyone in Boston. I didn't know anyone in Berkeley. I just, bit the bullet and just went because I did 1 year of music in my university back in Australia. So that was what I did in the 1 year deferral. And it was more like composition. So it was more writing in the 20th century kind of style, like Ligeti and things like that. But I felt like this isn't what I really wanted to do. I really wanted to, pursue kind of film scoring at that time. And like, how do film scores sound so, you know, classically, like a blend of classical instruments, but also um, evoke that sort of emotion that really only synths and like rumbles and things and can portray. So yeah, it was just that I wasn't really satisfied doing music back in my uni. So
mm.
yeah, decided to give this a go.
Yeah, that's to me like impressive. That's a big step, especially you don't even know anybody. And just like the whole idea of choosing your life when you're just out of high school is
Yeah.
to me like so crazy. To have to make such a big decision like that. But I guess you had the love and the passion and also like a pretty good background in music. It made it a
Mhm.
little easier to decide.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to really, meet people here who can also teach me, like not just the teachers, but the students to inspire me because I think part of that's what really made me enjoy the Berkeley experience as much as I did. Yeah.
I think you can learn a ton online. You can get into YouTube and you can sign up for courses in various places, but having that connection with people, interacting, it's something I think we're all like really missing right now because we're all kind of locked in home. But um, that I think that's so important because music is really, even if you are doing it by yourself, you're going to be working with other people. You need to interact and collaborate, or even just find people that will help you to the next step a little bit. And that seems like something you really took advantage of.
Yeah, definitely. Um, Also, I started working in the equipment room, and um, yeah, there was just a small team. There was always 2 people in the room, but there was only like 8 of us, rotating shifts from 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. every day. But it was that place where my knowledge and my connections with all the students grew immensely.
Mm.
In the equipment room in Berkeley, like you have access to all the synths, all the equipment. Like we just, I think they just got like the Moo gloves. So now the students are doing that, and it's just incredible to see what sort of gear is like tucked behind, and you can see what people borrow or not, and like it's really interesting and it's great because you can just pull out anything and try it out. And sometimes we'd have to like update firmware or something. But, it's that experience of doing something like that on something you've never touched is
Mm.
really invaluable.
Well, that's a great place to land, in the equipment room where all the fun
Yeah.
stuff is.
Yeah.
And then all the people are coming to see you, I'm sure.
Yeah. So we get to meet new people, but also we get to interact with them. Some of the students, I remember like in or second semesters would be like, "Oh, like that looks so cool. What is that?" And I was like, "Oh, it's just this synth, and this is how you plug it in. Here are the cables you need." And sometimes we'd give them the manual as well, so
Hmm.
give them a good starting place, or would even plug in and show them something and they'll be like, I want that. So,
That's cool. And I think you came into Berkeley at a really interesting time because I don't know if maybe it's like 2018,
mhm,
where they kind of formally accepted digital instruments as like a course of focus and study. Like normally it would be like piano or violin, get something more traditional. But now
mhm.
they've accepted MIDI controllers and synthesizers. And I guess even like DAWs really as like
Yeah.
your instrument,
Mhm.
which is, I love that. It's just kind of like about time sort of thing that like the established academic world is saying, yes, this is okay. And we are thinking more towards the future and not just at the tradition of the past.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that was a really exciting launch. I was part of the concert alongside with Claire Doltrick, and I was in the supporting student band. So I remember my setup was like a Alesis Vortex guitar, and what else? I was doing vocals and routing it through my computer as well. So they are the main two things I was doing. But yeah, it was super fun. I'm so glad I got to be a part of that, and that show I believe just really opened everyone's eyes to a production, to an electronic production to that scale, with both visuals, music, the interaction between musicians, and it's the same sort of energy, but in a different sort of way, where
Hmm.
you know it's like, oh, someone would process something and from someone else, and they would like take things from someone else, and it's just that interaction, I think, opens up that world to, I guess, traditional musicians who have never seen this before, and they're like, wow, you can make amazing cool electronic music, like in the sense of from a laptop,
Hmm.
and everyone's synced and connected because we were using Ableton Link at that time. And yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah, that's a really fun way to work. What really got me into recording in general was probably that I wanted somebody to like play my guitar solos over so I'd record my rhythm parts. But after that, it was like all the like fun experimentation that like bands like the Beatles had in the studio, and they treated the studio like an instrument.
Yeah.
And when I finally got into Ableton Live, it occurred to me like, oh my God, like now it's an instrument and it's something I'm
Yeah.
playing. And this idea of like collaborating with like musicians and kind of processing their stuff is like something I've wanted for so long. I can remember doing recording sessions with my friends, and maybe one of us would be playing guitar and the other one would play their pedals. Like they'd be on the floor with the knobs and turning them, doing things you couldn't do if you were actually playing the instrument. And that interaction is like something that's really starting to come to life in a lot of musical performances now, where maybe someone is playing like a Fender Rhodes and there's another person off to the side, and it's like they're a team on this one sound, this one instrument.
Yeah.
It's a cool way to work, and I think there's always been like a struggle to combine electronic sounds with acoustic sounds, but now it's like really getting interesting, and it's nice to see that it's being embraced, and it's
Mhm.
not just this like thing people are doing off to the side, but like kind of like the mainstream musical world is seeing a need for it.
Yeah, it's great. It's definitely like, thinking about the future and, we're all on our laptops nowadays and like what better place to start is making music from your laptop
Hmm.
and you can still blend traditional instruments with your laptop. That's what I do. I, route say my viola or violin through effects in Ableton.
Have you had any like interesting combinations and like maybe whether it's viola, violin, is there like something that you particularly like to do with those sounds inside of your computer?
Yeah, I honestly just first of all, like viola, playing like viola notes through it's already so luscious and just putting that reverb and delay just and putting that on freeze even just makes it beautiful and just, long and but processing that even more like glitching it up and it's really cool just to let see what a traditional sound can turn into and being a layer in a production where the
Mm,
sound source is really familiar but the technique or the usage isn't. So that's what I've really enjoyed using in my productions and continuing to discover. Sometimes I even play percussive kind of taps or just plucks and things like that, and that makes a really kind of organic sounding, like you can hear the body of the instrument when you're
right.
doing it. Beautiful. And when you process that even more, it's just you can make some crunchy, foley percussion things. And I've even experimented just like singing into the body of my viola,
Mm,
but I think I still have to, get that working a bit better. It sounds a bit muddy and gloomy and everything right now, but
right.
yeah, experimenting with different things I can do. Yeah.
I have I keep like a list of like packs I want to make, and one of them is like I think it's called like guitar percussion, and the idea is to like take my guitars, the acoustics probably more so, and just find all those noises, those bangs, those hits, and take advantage of the body of the guitar.
Yeah.
I found like what you say about singing into it. Another experiment that this reminds me of is if you go to a piano and you step on the I guess it's the sustain pedal that lifts the hammers or the mutes,
Mhm.
or I don't know, my terminology on pianos, not the
Yeah.
felts come off. Um, and then if you like go, like I've been on the floor holding the pedal and like singing or yelling into the piano, and it I guess it like causes the strings to resonate, and it creates
Mhm.
this like interesting, I don't know if I should call it natural reverb, but it just the certain notes kind of vibe with your frequencies and they harmonize and they um it's a really interesting, I would love for like an effect where where you can just
Definitely. I've done that in my piano back home a lot. It wasn't underneath the piano, but I remember just singing like two words like in the piano when I just held my foot down on the sustain. And yeah, you would just get this kind of your voice, but in a piano reverb aura kind of feel, and it will just be elongated as well, which is really nice. Actually, I remember my dog at that time barked when I was doing that, and you can hear her bark through the piano. It was really cool.
yeah, that's nice. I would bet I'd love to have like I should do this. I have a piano in my house, but it's not like here, it's upstairs, so I don't usually spend a lot of time experimenting with it, especially
Mhm.
because I sampled it a lot. But I'm kind of interested, if I were to like hold down certain keys, if you'd get this sort of like melodic or
Mhm.
harmonic reverb that's like kind
Yeah.
of like in key with whatever you're doing.
Yeah, my teacher actually back in the day, she taught me how to play a harmonic on a piano, and it was holding down an octave, like in your left hand, and playing the major triad or minor, or whatever triad. So like the root fifth and octave, um, but you play the octave, and then you gently, very very gently, like tap on the try it with the right hand, and then you'll hear those notes kind of ring as
Hmm.
well. Yeah,
Oh, that's neat.
it's really cool. It sounds like a harmonic, but it's really subtle. So yeah, maybe that might be.
Yeah, your voice might pick up on like those sympathetic vibrations in the strings, and
Yeah.
be a cool. It'd be cool to have like the piano's just so giant, you know. So I wonder
Yeah.
if you can get something similar through a viola. Do you find that when you try to sing in, do the strings sort of pick up on those? Feel is this not enough?
I don't know. I feel like it's not enough
Hmm.
because like the soundboard isn't like as big as a piano, first of
Yeah.
all. And there's only four strings. So there's only a certain kind of harmonics it will pick up if I did.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned freezing the sound. Were you talking about on the reverb, the little freeze button?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that, and I feel like it's so hidden almost. It's right there. It's a freeze button, but you don't see it getting used a lot. But when you hit that thing, it's like, whew, and
Yeah.
then you got this ever expansive like world that kind of comes out of the reverb that you can then
Mhm.
play with and sample or manipulate.
Yeah, I love using that just as a layer, as a bed, and just resampling that, and just it just sounds so beautiful and lush behind anything going on in the foreground.
Yeah, if you're not sure what we're talking about or you haven't tried it, there's a freeze button on Ableton's Reverb, and it just takes that moment of time of the reverb and extends it forever until you turn it off, really. And
Yeah,
yeah, it just creates a world, is how I hear it. It's really cool that it once you take it out of there too and start playing with it, you can have a lot of fun.
yeah, definitely. Just I love using Ableton just as kind of sound design jams, or just playing around with a viola line or whatever I've just recorded for fun,
Mm.
and just using all the stock tools and really seeing which combinations and how can produce such a cool effect. Yeah, just even stuff like Corpus or um, like the cabinet. It's just really cool to just hear your sound just being turned into something completely
Mm.
different. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. So is this through the Berkeley performance? Is that kind of how you got into showing up at Loop and being involved there? It,
I
that
yeah.
was in 2018 in
That
LA.
was 2018. Wow, it almost seemed like, 6 months ago or something.
Hmm.
But, um, it was part of the electronic music production. So my major had, they called a couple of students invited, to be part of the Loop program as volunteers. So I signed up, and a couple of my friends also signed up, and we all got in, and there was a group of us that went to LA in 2018 for Ableton's Loop conference. And it was really exciting. It was the first time I'd ever been to LA, first of all, and we were staying near Hollywood, so everything was a bit surreal for me. So
Hmm.
just seeing the Hollywood sign and palm trees and warm weather, because coming from Boston, it was super cold already. Um, and yeah, just being surrounded by musicians that I've seen online, but also, the everyday musician as well, or musicians I haven't, heard before, just sharing stories and techniques and experiences. Yeah, it was really eye opening just to see what sort of community this sort of event can create and can bring together. And come in a loop, like, not really super experienced in Ableton already, but I knew what it did. I used it for a bit of my stuff. But, after Loop, I was like, yeah, I definitely would want to just ham down going
Hmm.
into production, and just being so inspired by meeting people, by listening to the events. Um, yeah, just being in that space was really, really a great experience for me.
Yeah, there's something to be said about just being around a bunch of people who are all trying to, expand their art and try new things, are open-minded, they wanna share ideas.
Yeah.
It's a great vibe. It's a shame, we couldn't have it this year.
Mm.
But one thing I guess that I can say is that there are a lot of like things going on now. People are finding ways to connect, which is cool. I mean,
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad that we can do this over Zoom and, over virtual meetups.
mm.
It's, the replacement that needed to happen in this sort of time. But yeah, we're doing our best.
There's a lot of value to it. I mean, of course, in person is something different, but there, we get a pretty large percentage of it through this. So
Yeah.
it's been a fun time in that regard, I guess, that everyone is kind of showing up to their their meetings and gathering that way.
Yeah.
So, to speak of that, I guess we could maybe get into the thing we did together when we did the user group. Was that March or was that April? I don't even know anymore.
That was April.
It
Yeah.
was April.
Earlier this last month in May.
Yeah,
I,
it's so weird. Like I feel like it's been one long day. But
yeah.
you shared a remix you did, and that was through Gravitas. Was that through
Mhm.
Gravitas Records? Which is cool. I had Jesse on the podcast a while back, and you
Oh
know,
wow, that's
yeah, he
awesome.
was like they were launching like the Create part of their site. So Gravitas is I guess they're a record label, but they're also very into the community of producers and musicians, and there's often like challenges they come up with or samples they share to inspire. And you got involved doing a remix of I don't even know. I think the track is called Hypnotoad.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, and then it's Symbiotic is the artist. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah, it's my first exposure.
So Gravitas Create, they, along with Symbiotic, put out a remix competition last year, around August, and uh, it was something that I challenged myself because it was the summer. I challenged myself to, hey, let's complete a song this month, and I sat down and really tried to do this remix competition, and I knew about Gravitas before doing the remix comp because I listened to a lot of artists who are signed to Gravitas, and I really liked the creativity, the uniqueness of each one of their artists. So with Symbionic, I actually saw him live like in 2018. So I knew his work, and when he put this out, I was like, yes, I get the stems. I can make a remix. So that's what happened with Hypnotoad, and yeah, it was my first time doing a remix, so I had no like formulated way of doing it. I just kind of went about thinking what would serve the original song justice, but also how can I put my creative input into it. And like mentioned at the user group, I really embraced my love of melodies, um, and I really try to fuse the bass, the gurgly, wubby bass with my melodies, and yeah, made a remix.
Well, and you won that contest, right?
I won runner up, so I didn't
Run up.
win. Yeah,
That's
almost there.
awesome.
But yeah, I was actually so surprised because I didn't think like I would, be mentioned anywhere. But yeah, I'm glad it happened, and it's a great encouraging message to me just to say, hey, keep doing music because people like your stuff. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Well, I mean, that's gotta feel great on your first remix to get like, that kind of reception for it. And I wanted to ask you if you thought that maybe being new to remixing was somehow advantageous to you. Do you think that helped you in some way that you said you weren't following a strict formula?
Yeah, I guess so because I didn't really know what I was kind of doing. Like I didn't know how I should approach this, or but I knew like, hey, let's set out a form. I don't know what sort of form it is, but I just put markers in Ableton just being like, hey, this is where his drop is, maybe I should just follow that formula. So that was like my first instinct kind of thing.
Hmm.
And so I just put kind of guidelines throughout, and it really just evolved in each section to be what it is. Yeah.
I'm really into that way of working. I don't
Mhm.
do it much, but the few times I've done it that way, where you kind of like decide, here's where this is going to happen, here's where that's going to happen, almost beforehand. So you have like your path or your map, and you can do this by setting markers, I guess, or there's probably a couple other ways, maybe even with like MIDI clips that just announce the changes. But I think because like in live you can spend so much time in session view and have a lot of fun jamming and things don't ever have to really take shape,
Mhm.
but when you get into the arrangement view, that's when you kind of make decisions and you say, okay, this is going to happen here and that's going to happen here. And I think it's important to get there
Mhm.
early, because for me, I can, if I let an idea kind of like live in its own like universe where it's not really taking form, I start to get, I guess it's like a demoitis type of thing,
Mm.
where or it's like there's just so many ways I could take it that I can't commit to anything.
Yeah, it could just go on forever and ever. And I feel like sometimes there's like, you could keep jamming, but where do you break down? Where do you build up tension? Where do you
Mhm.
set it up? And I think those points are really important in like, a musical timeline.
Mm. But then you also decided to use your love of melody, and that's like kind of your flavor that you brought in.
Yeah, I was playing chords in this remix. So I was like, how can I like reharmonize this or something? But I think I was just going too much like music theory on this. So I was just keep it simple, you know, do that. And I just sang, played chords and really make it fit melodically, and harmonically underneath the arps, which are the main melody in the remix. So
Mm.
yeah.
I think that's smart because a lot of like bass music and like this track in particular, like you said, has all that gurgly action and like there's so much harmonic content in just the bass line that if you start layering too much on top, you either cover it up or it all gets lost and mushy and muddy.
Mhm.
So in order to let that live, I guess you have to know and restrain yourself a little bit and give that part room without covering it over something new.
Yeah, yeah, that's a really good point. I think just making room for whatever you want, your audience to really listen for and look out, and everything else is just kind of the icing on the cake. But the cake is really, your front centerpiece. And for, I guess, the remix was like the bass tones, and then in the breakdown, it was like the melody was the forefront. So that's when I really contrasted the two elements.
Hmm. How long did it take you to do that? To work on that remix?
The remix? Maybe about 3 weeks.
Oh.
I started it pretty late, actually. So, I think the time frame for the remix competition from opening date to the closing date was, like, maybe about 6 weeks.
Hmm.
But I started, like, maybe 3 weeks after that. So, yeah, around 3 weeks, yeah.
Right. That's cool.
On
That's a decent amount of time, but it's not too long where the project kind of like overtakes your life and
Yeah,
sometimes things get too big that you don't even know what to do with it after a while.
yeah. The problem with, I think, that I have is it gets too big, my CPU doesn't run well, everything cracks, and I just don't have, like, motivation to work, and
Okay. Yeah.
that's the point where, okay, I have to freeze and, like, commit things even though I don't want to. So, yeah.
I could see that being a blessing in disguise, though, too, because when you have everything in MIDI and it can all be changed all the time, it's so easy to just do something new with the idea, well, I'll just fix that thing I did before. When you have to commit, though, you're like, well, this is what I got now, and I gotta make this happen.
Yeah. It's like you can't change the sound all too much anymore because once you committed, you commit. But I think, yeah, just I think I just need to work like know what I want and, be ready to commit rather than just being scared and like deleting that layer in the
Yeah.
future. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's all about making those decisions and moving forward, and as much as you can, not look back.
Yeah.
So, you've gotten into some like commercial work too, from what I see, like and even like games. Is that correct?
Not games, but more commercial work,
Yeah.
definitely.
Okay. I saw like a shooting video game on your site, and
Oh,
I thought that
yeah,
was
that
pretty
was
cool.
that was like one of my demo kind of sound reels. It was just me doing a sound replacement on
Oh, I
my website.
gotcha. That was nice.
Yeah.
It was a cool, like, gave it like a science fiction feeling.
Yeah, yeah. I actually used that as my like application into the EPD major.
Oh,
So
nice.
that was that. But yeah, I do more commercial kind of composition now, which is really fun. There was a class in Berkeley actually that I took, and it was to compose for or advertisement, but in the sense of you'd get a brief. You wouldn't get like the spot or anything. You would get a brief, and you'd have to write to that. And I really enjoyed doing that class because it kind of put you out of your creative artist headspace into, okay, I need to write something for someone, but they don't know really like what they want. So sometimes they would be like, oh, we want it to be like emotional, luscious, but like not too somber or like melancholic. So in that class we like kind of decoded what all those words mean.
Mm,
And it was really just trying to write in that style of a client in a very short period of time. And I really enjoyed doing that. And it also allowed me to play a lot more with different things that I normally don't touch. So, any other Ableton instruments that I never touch, I would just reach to, and testing out new things. It was such a great opportunity to do so.
mm. Yeah, that's cool. And I guess you're taking like probably a lot of people that aren't musicians, and they have their adjectives and their descriptions for what they want, and you have to then like translate that into musical terms and theory and ideas.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's yeah, sometimes people just don't it's hard to put, specific musical terminology to feeling, if you're
Mm,
coming from that agency perspective and not knowing what, a harsh sound, only knowing what a harsh sound was. And for the musicians, it will be like, oh, really bright, aggressive, like, distorted. That's what we, associate with aggressive. But, you know, you have to know that to really, produce the music that they're looking for.
right. And I'm sure too, it gives you that guidance, and it just by hearing these briefs, you get some walls put around you, so you know kind of like where your playground is and what you need to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's nice that a lot of the times that they would give you kind of examples, so you kind of understand where their words come from in a more it's more contextualized.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's really more defined where what sound world you can start to play around with.
Hmm. In the class I do on Berkeley Online, it's the sampling class. And the
Mhm.
first assignment is to create like horror show music. And the example given is the American Horror Story theme,
Oh,
the
okay.
opening thing. And it's very like
Yeah.
time stretched, granular kind of sound. And
Yeah.
it's a really cool music actually. Um, but the students are always like, wow, I never did that before. And it had me trying all these things I've never thought of. And it just changes like I think so many of us make music as like artists, and we're expressing ourselves, and we're so complex that it's very hard sometimes to like zero in on what we're feeling or what direction we want to go. but having like that assignment, for instance, or just any time where you're kind of like asked to do something specific, really helps you take all of the like stuff you've learned, your skills and your abilities, and put it to a very specific purpose.
Yeah. That's Yeah, that's like one thing that I kind of like about ad music, where it's just you kind of just put that aside and really hone in on what you need to do exactly.
Yeah.
So, you know, you'll find any tools that, you know, may help you get a specific sound. And yeah, it just puts all you know, your artistry behind, just really focus on your chops and
Mm.
your skill level. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah. I enjoy leaving that behind. Like the fear, is this like hip enough or is this intelligent enough? It's like, no, like it's trying to accomplish this goal and it doesn't matter really. And the only people that ever really think about that are probably just me and maybe a few music snobs out there, you know. But
Yeah.
it's I think it's a great strategy, even if you're not making music for film or commercial or anything, to sort of give yourself those parameters to work in.
Yeah, and even if you don't like working or, like, making music for, like, a client perhaps, just make music of every single genre you could possibly think of, and
Mm.
even though it's not related to your artistry, it doesn't even have to be, but just knowing how they, certain, you know, sounds sound like and how to make them in a particular genre is really useful. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. Because I come from like doing like more rock and roll type music, playing in bands. And I've learned so much about making that kind of music through learning about like bass music or anything that's like electronic based. And some of the techniques like can actually carry over really well. And I think when you're doing rock music, it's easy to miss the fact that like the instrumentation of like say guitar, bass, drums, and vocals, those were selected because they all kind of fit in their place by
Mm,
default. You know, like you got your rhythm and your drums and the bass too, and the bass stays low. It can't get that high, and the guitar sits on top of that. When you're doing electronic music or digital music, like you don't really have any instruments. You have just all kinds of sounds, and it took me a while to realize, oh, like things need to have their place. And
yeah.
the reason why the like rock band format is so successful is because it is already set up that way. So I never really had to think about that and consider it because it was just built into the type of music I was making. But
Mm,
moving into like other types of music really opened my eyes to that and taught me that a lot of mixing and a lot of writing is about like where I'm putting sounds, what types of
yeah.
sounds I'm putting together.
And yeah, that's really good that you said that, because it took me a while to really, you know, and I'm still learning, um, just what sounds really belong in which part of like the frequency spectrum,
Mm.
really, and just to really enunciate which part of the spectrum you want to enunciate, and each part kind of has a different feeling associated with it. So, you know, I think now you mentioned that rock and roll setting, I'm thinking, wow, that makes so much sense. Like the bass, drums, and guitar. And I listened to a lot of classical music growing up, and everything kind of just sits as well, because you only have that many you have so many violins, but like only two trumpets. But the two trumpets can just cut across the whole orchestra so
Right.
easily, because you know, it's the timbre that they have. It's just so much brighter, a lot more, yeah, brighter compared to a strings. You can only, you know, have such bright strings if you really be really aggressive. But yeah, just having that layout of the orchestra and just yeah, the woodwinds and the brass and then the percussion behind. Um, it's funny. Yeah, realizing that how well it sits in a whole is really interesting as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of mixing becomes a lot easier when you make those considerations first. A lot of
Yeah.
the struggles I've had in mixing were because I just chose bad sounds. Like they just were fighting with each other. And that's why everything sounds muddy because, well, I have four bass parts. What do I expect?
Oh, could be cool.
Yeah, yeah. But like if I'm going to do that, then I guess I can't have all that other fun stuff too.
Yeah.
It's so much about sacrifice and um, making things work as a whole. Because I think too, when you're doing music on your own, you're making every single part. So like you want every part to stand out. When you're playing in a band, you know, if I was playing guitar, I just want my guitar to stand out. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm not also too concerned about the bass or the drums. You know what I mean? Because oh, I didn't play those parts, so they can. But when you do everything, you get this like temptation to want everything to be the focus. But
Yeah.
then nothing's in focus.
Mhm. Yeah, there's definitely a time and place for each element and each instrument to really shine and have its moments, I believe. And I think with electronic productions, it's very easy just to smash everything and just like, make every little sound important,
Mm,
which sometimes yes, but I think having like a central point and knowing what you want your audience to listen to is really important.
right. So, where do you see yourself going in the future? Are you thinking like to get more into the commercial type stuff, or are you looking for like the artist direction?
That's such a good question. I'm actually like split between the 2 right now.
Mhm.
Yeah, I actually like kind of work at a music house right now, and so I do that commercial kind of production, but I also haven't stopped, making music with my artistry, and I, I really want to continue that in the long term. But I think the best of both worlds is, creating music, and that's what I love doing at the end of the day. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I guess there's no need to choose really. And
yeah,
I'm sure the commercial stuff will help inform you and on the artistic side and teach you about new approaches and directions and sounds and all of that. Hmm.
yeah, definitely. Yeah, with the commercial side, it's really you meet people who aren't necessarily knowledgeable about music, but they know what it needs to sound like. So it's really interesting, meeting that sort of people and picking their brains and um, feeding their terminologies into your production side and how to turn that into kind of something, the commercials would want, but also in that process, getting the skills and the ideas, you might come out with something cool that you created for a commercial and turn it into your own. So I've
Hmm.
done that with a couple of my projects is like, I like this melody on this one I did. I'll just take it and start a new project and, make that melody into a synth line or something. So
Right. Yeah, that's a cool idea. Do you plan on doing any sort of teaching or anything? Because I mean, you were doing that presentation that came out really well. So,
oh,
do you think?
um, yeah, I would love to in the future. I would feel like I would, maybe perhaps, um, gather more knowledge and skills to teach properly, because I don't wanna teach anything, like, wrong or, like, very opinionated or biased. I want everyone to, have be inspired, but also, informed of the choices I make. Yeah.
I think a big part of teaching is maybe even a bigger part of teaching than knowing everything is getting people excited to learn and
Yeah.
to grow on their own. Um, when I first started teaching, I teach in high school English, and I felt so great like the first time I said I don't know, because like then all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, well, look, I'm not
Oh,
pretending to be anything I'm not now, and just the freedom of saying I don't know, like let's figure it out. And I kind of think that like that helps people too. even with music or anything, like just to say like, oh, this journey is going on forever. This learning music, this learning anything, this mastering your craft is something that goes on your whole life. And you don't get to a point where you just stop and you know everything.
Yeah.
And that's when you stop growing if you get to that point.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I realized actually going to Berkeley, and there would always be some artists or some professional coming into the to give a talk or something. And um, I got to meet Armin van Buuren, famous trance DJ in the electronic world, and his he said, I haven't stopped learning. Like I'm 40 years into this industry, and there's not been a day where I haven't discovered something new.
Hmm.
And that's when I realized, wow, you can never stop learning. And I think that's the beauty about music production. It's you just find new tools, new ways of creating things, and that process of curiosity and discovery never stops. And that's really fascinating for me at the time and still is now.
Yeah, I love that way of thinking. I remember Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones saying something similar, like looking at the guitars, like this thing, it's a puzzle, it's a mystery, and I'm always figuring new things out. And then you're like, wow, even you, like you've been doing this for so long now, yet you still find mystery and excitement about discovering it.
Yeah, I think putting that in perspective, like I feel as musicians and as artists, we tend to be so hard on ourselves. Like, oh, why can't we? We can never be as good as this person. We look up to them, and you just never can get your sound to sound as good as X or Y Z. And then you really think, hey, they're still learning, and I'm still learning, and we're all on this journey, and it's a different path, and no one's learning is going to be the same as someone else's. So I think we have to embrace what we have and enjoy the process.
Did you find in the classical training, I think that's much more focused on like technicality and perfect. I mean, you have to play really well in those situations, and it's so competitive to get like a seat in an orchestra or some kind of ensemble. Um, did you find that like any sort of, was there like a time where that sort of like changed for you, maybe where when you got into like this world where that wasn't so, I don't want to say it's not important, but I think there's like a different focus, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think especially with learning all these pieces by memory and just getting your technique up. It's for me, I was so nervous every time I performed or did an examination or something like that. And it was just I felt like, the creativity, it was there, but it wasn't like it was me. I was trying to be something, play something else. But with like production, it's really I can craft the sound as how I want to. I can slow it down, I can speed it up however I want to.
Mm.
And in a way, it's kind of the same in classical, but you're really trying to play a piece and it's all scripted out for you. So yeah, it's different, but I definitely feel freer and more creative, like writing what I do now in productions.
I was thinking because you did mention how excited you were when you were quantizing MIDI notes,
Yeah.
and just to take that like kind of that aspect out of the equation, I can imagine that being kind of fun.
Yeah, I was off the moon. I was like, "Wow, this is real." And then you could like change your instruments and they would actually sound good because the time I'd only really listened to Sibelius instruments, and now we have Contact and Atmosphere and the works, and you can just different sounds inspire me creatively just to write.
Mm,
And yeah, it was just that discovery, and yeah, really just feeling more open to engaging with different sounds and instruments.
right. Yeah, that's cool. That's that kind of stuff is I never really got into it too much, like the perfection of performance and playing, and because that's where I would get frustrated when I would be trying to do something perfect. You know, you get that like, oh, you messed up at the last second, and so I like I've always embraced since then like imperfections and sometimes things that are wrong. Um,
Yeah.
you know, just to add like a little humanity, because you can over quantize things too and suck the life out of it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's one thing I did a lot during my, I guess, early days of Ableton. I was so obsessed with that quantize button and
Yeah.
everything just acted like a robot. And then, over time you realize that, hey, music, there is feel and, push and pull and everything. So trying to blend that, you know, aspect of production and that knowledge of quantizing things just to humanize them and just to really blend them together.
Mm. Yeah. It's an art, definitely. Finding that
Yeah.
balance.
I remember you in the Ableton user group, you were talking about a lot of quantizing and how you can follow the instruments.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, my examples were like pretty drastic with I had like drums speeding up and slowing down to, you know, that'll make you seasick if you listen to it too much. But it is nice that we have all this way of kind of embracing the humanity, but, you know, fixing it enough where it's still listenable.
Yeah.
I love turning the quantize to like 50%,
Mhm.
70, maybe even if I'm feeling like I was a little off. But just to have it like, you know, it's a little better. It's not
Yeah.
perfect yet, but
Yeah, I
it's a little
definitely
closer.
like the percentages in the settings because, yeah, you don't have to be on the grid all the time, but you can kind of be on the grid. So,
Right. This
yeah.
is like a little more what I meant.
Yeah, yeah. I was
Yeah.
like, "I just played that a little late," so just yeah,
Yeah. You clean it up a little. Nice compromise.
yeah.
Cool. So do you have any plans? Anything next? Anything going on that's exciting for you?
Um, well, right now in this lockdown is I've just been making a bunch of music, so hopefully that's
Good.
gonna be released soon. Yeah, I'm pretty excited about a couple of tracks I'm writing right now. And other than that, I'm just writing for commercials and yeah, just embracing my love of music production in both of the fields I'm in right now.
Right. Well, that's awesome. That's a great time to write music, right? I mean,
Mhm. Definitely.
that's I want to get to some of that. I've been a little busy with a lot of other things lately, but I think after this weekend I'll be a little more free, so I'm looking forward to that myself too.
Awesome.
So I have Maddy Kong as .com as like I guess a hub, but you're pretty active on like some of the other places too. Where do you like to send people?
Um, my website is great. That's more for my like commercial stuff. But if I I have a SoundCloud on my Sesamii, and I also just have like an Instagram, Sesame Official. You can reach me up there.
Okay, we'll put all that in the show notes. I'll put a link to the video from the user group and also the remix on SoundCloud and
On
well,
Spotify, Apple Music as well. So
okay, Sesame, right? So
yeah,
that's Sesamii. So
yeah.
that'll help you find it a little easier. Great. Maddie, it was really nice talking to you, and it was fun getting to see you work at the user group. And, you know, as I said, I think it's really cool that you've kind of like bridged these two worlds. I think sometimes, from my observations, take them for what they're worth, but sometimes like people are either in one place or the other, you know, where classical was more kind of like doesn't get involved in the electronic or the future modern stuff. And same thing goes the other way, where a lot of times like producers in the more current world we're in don't look back as much. So I think it's cool that you're bringing those two together and showing kind of the best of both worlds and how they can be combined.
Yeah, thank you.
There's
Thank you
no
so much. having me, Brian. It was a pleasure to speak on your music production podcast.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. And we can thank everyone for listening too. So that'll be it. So go to maddykong.com and check out the show notes for all the other links. You can hear these songs we are talking about, the Hypnotoad remix. And yeah, have a great day, everyone.